Good morning, you guys. It's your boy Bill Mahari here, representing Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. Much love to the entire LDBC and the entire basketball community. If you want more basketball content, tune into Basketball Conversations every Friday night, 9 p.m. Central Time. This is where we discuss basketball-related topics, news, debates, and everything else in the world of basketball. So, I woke up this morning and saw a video from Mr. Too Raw for TV. Salute to him. And I saw an article from Yahoo Sports, and salute to the Clippers and the Lakers because they are pretty much voting to end the season completely in protest, which is like the one thing I have been voicing on my channel since day one, that the season should have been ended because of social injustices, not just with the pandemic too, because that was part of it as well. But when I read the article from Yahoo Sports, it pretty much stated that there was a meeting that took place yesterday. It took place after the playoff games that were scheduled that basically got canceled in response to what happened to Jacob Blake, who tragically was shot in the back uh, 7 times on Sunday in Wisconsin. According to Yahoo Sports, LeBron James planned to vote with the consensus, but basically got angry and stormed out of the meeting. And there were also reports that there was frustration from the Milwaukee Bucks that pretty much forced their hand into boycotting, their game yesterday. Now, according to the Athletics Chance Cardinia, um, that every team besides the Lakers and the Clippers voted to keep on playing. Although Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN also reported that the players' votes were not final and that discussions will continue even through Thursday, which is today. So the fate of Thursday's playoff games remain and beyond remains unclear. Without a resolution from Wednesday, it seems unlikely that the games will be played on Thursday. So there were 3 games that were supposed to be scheduled for today, which is Nuggets Jazz, Celtics Raptors, and Clippers Mavericks. But because those games got postponed yesterday, they're going to get postponed today. Um, so why a lot of these players walked out? Well, the Bucks pretty much issued a statement on Wednesday, deciding to walk it out, and pretty much they made a statement, pretty much supporting the Black Lives Matter movement and responding to what happened to Jacob Blake, who got shot in the back uh, 7 times, which left him paralyzed. And pretty much they just walked out in unison because they just felt uncomfortable in playing. And when you watch inside the NBA yesterday, Kenny Smith, who's been an analyst for Turner Sports for decades, was pretty much just did not feel comfortable of basically, being on set. And he joined with the unison of the players, took off his microphone, and just walked off the studio. And you notice how Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley didn't join in unison together with him. You know, eh, at this point, it's going to come down to picking sides right now. And you're going to see a lot of people pretty much picking sides. Either they're for social justice for black people or they're not. And it's not surprising to me coming from Shaq and Charles Barkley because those guys, Shaq can is a two-faced two-faced hypocrite because of the way he views things, and we all know Charles Barkley's views on everything else. He's just pretty much just a sellout. I'm not going to go deep into that, but I have been one of those guys that has been pretty much voicing that sustain to just shut the season down because of this. Because it was pretty much there was no reason to continue basketball. Because what I said in my last video yesterday, I said that basketball all it's doing is just pretty much distracting away from the real issues at hand here. And there were a lot of people in the media, like the Stephen A. Smiths and the Kendrick Perkins, that were pretty much talking about, well, we don't need to cancel the season. I mean, you can still play basketball and still voice your question response. No, you can't. You can't voice a message across while playing your sport. And what I saw in response to what the NBA did, the MLB, MLS, the NFL, they all joined in unison together to pretty much postpone their games in response to this. Um, Now I don't know if they're gonna have enough support to pretty much shut the entire season down. But if the owners don't try to, you know, if the owners stand off and still held their position of just continuing the season, then yes, absolutely 100% that you're gonna have to shut the season down. Now, there is a consequence to this. That if the players agree in unison to shut the season down, that means that they're gonna have to renegotiate a new collective bargaining agreement, which meant the old collective bargaining agreement is going to be ripped apart, and both the NBA Players Association and the league will be in a new lockout to agree to basically negotiate a new collective bargaining agreement. Now, we talked about this somewhat on the Smoke City Mobcast yesterday, and what I pretty much said in conclusion is this: if you're gonna make change, you have to hit them where it hurts. All right, you got to hit their dollar signs, because black people are the biggest consumers of all sports league products around the world. Okay, they value the black dollar more than anything else. Don't let them fool you. They value that more than anything. And if people decide to agree in unison that we're not going to spend money on your products, trust me, they're going to have to respond and make the changes needed, because if they can't make their money, then they're going to go out of business. And that's just basically what it is. So if if the players decide in unison that these owners that pretty much spend taxpayer dollars on new basketball arenas can't use their money to basically to pretty much, you know, help out in terms of the fight of social injustice, then we can just walk out and they can have no basketball. That's the way you got to force them to make the change. Okay. And I've already seen people on Twitter particularly like, oh, they're professional athletes. They're making millions of dollars. That's just called ignorance. And anytime I hear ignorance, I just block them on site, because I have no reason to debate them, because they're coming from a fundamentally flawed philosophy. Now, I salute the NBA for what they did. I salute the players for doing for what they did. Now, the other issue that you're going to have to realize is this: if the players decide together that they're going to decide to cancel the season, okay, you're going to have to figure out a way to use those platforms to get the message across. And don't you think at this particular point that Kyrie Irving, who was pretty much told them like, hey, we can use our power to create our own league and form our own regulations? Don't you kind of think that that idea now is becoming much more real? I mean, come on. Kyrie knew exactly what he was talking about, and he got ripped to shreds by the mass media, because they all basically called him crazy. They called him ignorant, and Kendrick Perkins pretty much was acting like a sellout, and pretty much was against it for whatever the reason he had. And then Kevin Durant basically called him a sellout and basically called him a loser on Twitter. So I tend to believe that right now this is the perfect time to do it. And what happened to Jacob Blake on Sunday? This is the perfect time to really make a worldwide statement around the world that that violence against black people will not be tolerated anymore. And if you have to hit their dollars to get their message across, so be it. All right. And the other thing that I also really respect what Two Raw pretty much said was that people have this mindset of, not voting because they don't like what the candidates have to say, and I get it. And I've been much said even outside of this channel that I'm not voting because both these candidates are trash, right? But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to vote for my local people in my hometown. I'm going to start doing like looking around and just seeing like who are these people, what are their philosophies are, and what are they going to try to do to better our community. And if I don't like what they have to hear, they don't get my vote. You have to really start investing in improving your community. That's where it starts. And people like Mitch McConnell, they've always believed that Mitch McConnell's position is held permanently. No, it's not. If black people unite together and pretty much have the voice of the people to put them in positions of power to make those kind of necessary changes, they're going to be on the bit of that corporate time, because they're going to have to unison with the people to really enforce these changes, to making it into reality. And when I basically watched snippets of what it was being said at the Democratic and basically Republican conventions, nothing really convinced me that they really cared about it much at all. And when the Democrats pretty much try to say we are the world and we're putting a woman of color into our race, it doesn't mean anything because they did not really address what's going on. They're not providing the solutions necessary to really improve the lives of Black people, right? And more other thing too. Don't think for a second that President 45's words don't have much meaning. Okay, in the 4 years that he's been in office, what did he said? He said that basically a nationalist, right? Which is basically code for I'm a white supremacist. Okay, and what happened afterwards? The shooting at the synagogue. All right, the shooting down in Florida. Okay, what else happened? Philando Castile, Jamal Clark. All right, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. The list keeps going on and on. And you can go back towards a decade. All right. What happened to Trayvon Martin at the hands of George Zimmerman? All right. All these things, they all are influenced by President 45. Okay. All his words and his rhetoric. Don't get me wrong, he is an idiot. But the rhetoric that he spills really comes down to a lot of the people that take his words verbatim and they follow what he says. Okay, don't think for a second that guy is dangerous because he is. All right, but in conclusion to this, salute to the players for doing the right thing. Salute to them for using their voices. They're using their voice to really speak on an issue. Okay, if they have to walk out to really force the owners and the commissioner to go out and make the necessary changes happen, okay, that will speak volumes around the country, and it is going to create a aftershock effect, almost what happened to George Floyd. Okay, yeah, it was terrible for what happened to both of these, for both to happen to Jacob Blake and to George Floyd. Their deaths were untimely and should never have happened. But you see the aftershock effect of what happened. Okay, there are now people that are united together in unison to pretty much voice their sustain against police brutality. And right now, I'm seeing the same thing all over again in Wisconsin. And if we get more people to pretty much unite together and say no more, it's time to start putting politicians that know what we feel into key areas in office in Washington. We have a good chance of making some good changes happen. All right, but we have a lot of work to do to make those kind of goals possible. But tell me what you guys think in the comment section.